Hi, all, and welcome to the 2021 Boise Entrepreneur Week Build Track First Customer panel discussion. Today I have Drake Finlay of Drake Integrations, Leif Elgethun of Sprout Energy and Retrolux, and Dean Pape of the Chase Mixus. Thank you all for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
To get started, why don't we talk a little bit about your companies, your products, your space, and your connection to Boise. Leif, why don't you take us off?
More than happy to. So I'm CEO and founder at Retrolux, and we are a software company that sells design, sells, and install technology to electrical contractors, mechanical contractors to help them upgrade existing buildings with energy efficiency and smart technologies like LEDs, smart motors, and HVAC systems. My connection to Boise is I was born here at St. Luke's downtown. I grew up for most of my life in Nampa. I went to the University of Idaho in Moscow before living in North Idaho in beautiful Coeur d'Alene for a little while and coming home to Boise and have been here ever since. So lifelong Idahoan, most of the time here in the Treasure Valley, and really, really enjoy everything that Idaho has to offer. Great place to start a business, great place to raise your family, and personally, I just love the outdoors.
Sound like a busy guy. Dean, what about you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business and your Boise connection?
Happy to. So my business partner and I run a real estate development company based both here in Boise and in Eugene, Oregon. The company started in 2012 with a partnership between Mark Mixus and myself. I had the opportunity to move to Boise 8.5 years ago from the Portland market. Primarily focused on urban infill product. Most of the time right now is mixed use residential focused. As Leif mentioned, we are extremely excited about Boise and everything that Boise has to offer. And we've learned a lot in the growth of this market to take those into other markets in the Northwest. But there's definitely a focus right now in what we do on the balance of life. Having to live in great locations like Boise and all that Boise has to offer. There's an attraction from many places around the U.S. and internationally to move to places like Boise.
Interesting. And Finlay, please tell us about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I've got two companies, Drake Integrations, engineering and consulting company that focuses on control systems, building automation, and commissioning of medium to large scale commercial buildings, a lot of military work, data centers, hospitals, and so on. And then a startup company from my years experience, 10 years owning Drake Integrations as a consultant, realized that there's a need for a cheaper, stronger, faster, better building automation platform out there. And so in my little spare time, I've been developing a building automation platform, hardware and software, known as Kajora, where I am the founder and CEO. Moved the headquarters for both companies out of Southern California to Boise, and am now located in Trailhead, which is a co-working space. Have found a lot of great like-minded entrepreneurs. In fact, working with one of my desk neighbors as they are working on some of the software aspects of the Kajora platform. So really excited about the talent and capabilities that I've been finding here in Boise, and it's been quite the blessing to move here, and looking forward to spending more time outdoors, fishing and hunting.
I like that. I appreciate Dean's comments too on the balance of life note for Boise, Idaho. And let's talk a little bit about Boise as a market for your industries. How do you see Boise playing a role in your growth here and in other markets? And how has Boise shaped your approach to your product and those broader markets? Finlay, do you want to start?
Sure. I'll kind of focus on more of the building automation platform that I'm developing. And I think what's great about Boise and Idaho is that our market in commercial building automation, I think it's a fantastic location. The smaller city where I think they're really being proactive about their energy consumption. They do have climate action plans, and one of the easiest way to kind of reduce your energy is turn things off. And how do you turn things off? Smart building intelligence. So in commercial buildings, or buildings in general, consume about 40% of the U.S.'s total energy. And I really think it's a potential great location to kick off our platform, and it could be a big benefit to Boise.
Interesting. And Leif, how about your experiences with the Boise market and your product development here?
Yeah, so we think Boise is just a great place to grow and start and grow a business, and have really enjoyed working with the talent, both internal to our team, employees, as well as our supporters from legal to accounting and so on and so forth. So we think that's just a great foundation. The work-life balance that Dean mentioned is just a great attractor of high-level talent. I think we see more and more of that coming to Boise. With big exits, Clearwater Analytics went public today. So holy moly, how amazing is that to have that kind of software talent? And so for a software company, we know that's going to spur more innovation, more talent, both being homegrown and imported. So we think the talent base is strong and getting stronger, which is a foundation for a company. You got to have the talent, and that's just getting better and better in Idaho. When we think about our customer base, for us, we sell nationally, coast to coast, border to border. We have customers all across the country. And some here in Idaho. And so we really enjoy working with our customers locally because it gives us a chance to go hands-on with our product and get their direct feedback while they're using it in the field, because our tool does have a field aspect to it. So that can be super, super helpful as well. So last but not least is just the fact that I was able to really formulate the idea here and get a lot of feedback from people early on as I moved from being a practitioner of doing energy efficiency projects for building owners into developing a product for them. So really similar to Finlay, I was able to, really take on the ground experience and translate that into something that I could take internationally or nationally and eventually internationally. So I think Boise has what it takes both for early customer development and discovery as well as all the resources you need to get a company started and off the ground.
Wonderful. Dean, you have in your new construction industry a lot of growing needs for energy efficiency and building automation. How are you seeing that play into your projects in Boise?
Good question. I think we take it on from the end user part, and most of our end users at this point are residents of our buildings. So it's their homes at the end of the day. So we're always looking for opportunities to make their lives easier. And the other aspect of that is how those projects or products are impacting or assisting to not impact the environment. So we're always an open door on what is the new and exciting product out there, and is it something that makes a lot of sense for our clients who are residents of the building to integrate into their lives. So we've seen a wave of interest in lighting systems that are controlled easily by your phone, or access to your home through your phone, or package delivery systems, and how those make lives easier by being able to go and grab those at any time. So I think within the Boise market and products that are coming out, like Finlay talked about, allow us to provide products to people living here. And a lot of times we're learning from people moving from larger markets and new innovative products that they're been using there. And how do we implement those into what we're trying to build into what I consider kind of a smaller market or a growing demand market.
Hey, Dean, question for you on the lighting side of things. Obviously, that's a huge, not only energy consumer, but something that end users, occupants of buildings, kind of one of the first things they obviously see. Have you seen circadian lighting capabilities starting to come to market, meaning where it's changing colors and things based on time of day, potentially could even based on mood? They do it in the new airplanes nowadays, but I know that's kind of a newer technology that I'm starting to hear some rumblings about on the large commercial buildings, where taking kind of emotions and changing changing the lighting, or depending on what you're trying to accomplish, even like building in for schools, you know, you want kids to pay attention a little bit more, so they change the lighting a little bit. Have you
I
seen
haven't,
any of that coming your way?
Nothing in the residential side. You know, a lot of our focus recently in both the automation, but also is kind of cleanliness, you know, air quality systems and in the changes because of what we've been dealing with the past 18 months. That's probably been our primary area that we're seeing area of opportunity. When we talk about lighting and lighting load levels and how we can maximize the return on investment. And I say that globally with the impact that we're trying to use less energy as much as possible in placement of lights and making sure we're not overlighting areas or underlighting areas, depending on how that area is being used and being more task specific. But we haven't gotten into kind of light changing technology, which I would be interested to learn more about.
Yeah, that's very much an emerging field. And it's been interesting to see in new construction how different standards, programs, and certifications have grown, similar to the well building program that Finlay mentioned with the circadian lighting. Leif, when you're working with a client, how has that changed with the new technologies where certifications and programming for these emerging standards gets built into your program with the client?
Yeah, so our predominant customers these days are doing energy efficiency and smart building upgrades to existing commercial, industrial, retail, hospitality, basically all across the entire stack of non-single family homes. And what we see is that there's a tremendous increase in interest in doing advanced controls across the board. What we're not seeing is a tremendous increase in implementations and deployments. So, you know, we'd like to say that we're kind of in the early innings of what I would consider to be advanced controls. And we think there's going to be another wave in maybe 7 to 8, 10 years, we'll see, where we see the IoT-ification of buildings happen. So we're kind of in the early innings of going from like no control to basic, no control to basic controls kind of happen. And now we're starting to look at going from basic controls to advanced controls. And, you know, in 5, 7, 10 years, I don't know exactly when it'll happen. You'll start to see people putting in just tons and tons of sensors to really measure, meter, sense our buildings so that you can do things like have them adjust the color temperature because they're noticing that kids are starting to like drop their heads in class and getting tired. And all of a sudden it pops the lights brighter and wakes them up again, right? Like this will come. There's already stores out there that have used the lighting system in particular to track every single person as they come through the door and see what you're looking at on the shelves so they can actually watch your head and where you're looking at on the shelves. And if you have their app in their pocket and it's open, it might know who you are. So that kind of technology is already happening. They're embedding it in the lights, but it's effectively a sensor package with cameras and all these things so they can kind of see where you're at, what you're looking at, and use that to decide what to sell you, as well as maybe seeing you grab a thing of ketchup off the shelf, put it back, and then you might get a notification on your phone saying, hey, you want to get a special or a coupon on ketchup today. Like that technology is already installed in the stores. It's very big brother. They're not turning it all the way on because they don't want to freak people out, but we're going to see a tremendous increase. And when I say IoTification, like that's what I mean. Like they're going to put tons of sensors, tons of controls in these buildings and have them start paying attention to people and using that to help with productivity, help with learning if it's a school, help with health outcomes if it's a hospital. Retail, obviously, they're going to try to get you to buy more because that's what they're trying to do. So you're going to see different use cases for that based on the building type. And some of the big companies are already implementing this stuff right now. But again, it's still a relatively small part of the market. Most buildings are still putting in, code minimum stuff. And our software really helps companies deploy technology at the level and complexity that they want to or that their customers want to. And so, we really look at supporting people where they are and where they're going in the future.
Yeah, that raises a very good point with the Internet of Things and the data analytics behind it. Finlay, as someone who works less in residential and more in commercial, industrial, and military applications, how are you seeing that translate to your line of work for as much as you can share, especially on the military side?
Yeah, as Leif mentioned that we're still at the very early innings when it comes to this technology and the implementation. There's a lot of barriers right now. A lot of it's cost. we're starting to see a lot of these IoT sensors that are starting to bring the cost down, but the main building automation platforms are very expensive and honestly more difficult than they need to be to implement. I just checked earlier today, there's 30,000 plus control technician jobs opening. So there's not enough talent to be able to even execute some of these intelligent or smart buildings. So, I do think we're at the early innings. The other issue too is if you're familiar with construction and commercial buildings, the electricians, the electrical guys, the electrical engineers don't talk to the mechanical engineers. Mechanical engineers don't talk to the AV guys, audio, video, don't talk to the security, fire life protection systems. Those are all different entities and they never communicate with each other. So if you want a true integrated facility, you need somebody or an entity to bring all of those team members together. And that's where I'm seeing a huge lack of teamwork on the engineering side and on the construction side. So I think there's a long ways to go in that aspect before we actually start seeing fully integrated buildings.
Dean, I know very much that you're often that entity who has to bring it all together for the different new technologies coming out in your products, especially when you consider how long it takes a building to get built and also be planned in its development. What are you seeing some lessons learned as you work with the building is now open, you have customers coming in, but you also have these new technologies, new standards that are being introduced, yet that isn't integrated potentially, for example, to the mechanical and air climate control systems or the electrical systems. One example is, for example, access control and security lighting. Previously, buildings were wired for those items. With the Internet of Things and new technologies and companies like Nest, very often you see at the end of the project a more nimble, cheaper product being available. How do you bring that all together and try and stay ahead of the curve as much as possible and be proactive?
Well, as easy as it sounds sometimes, communication up front as quickly as possible. We believe in bringing the team together from day one and letting them bring hey, you better think about this or think about that, or hey, don't spend your money on wiring these things anymore because they're going out. Most recently, everyone remembers the cable jacks. You plug your TV in your cable box. We're not planning on doing those anymore. It's just not something that's needed by tenants. So, and as things change, implementation of certain things is becoming easier later. As you mentioned, there are products out there, kind of a post-completion product, but we're trying to adjust on the fly a little bit and be able to be flexible and be able to provide for some of these changes to happen. But starting with a very simplified platform now, instead of having sometimes feeling like an overcomplicated system of communication and wires. And at one point, how did your lighting system talk to your HVAC system? Well, now it's all has a simplified platform for the most part, and they talk to themselves before we even know about it. So it's making our job a little easier as long as you get all of those groups to start talking early enough to say, hey, we have this system which allows these things to happen because it's already integrated into that. Wanting to make sure that they all come back to kind of one centralized ease of use package is what we're always trying to do from the very get-go. But it's ever changing. So every opportunity that we get to try something new, we'll take a hard look at it and run it down and see if it makes sense for our projects. But by the time we open the door, we're already behind, ultimately.
You bring up another good point for team building. Leif and Finlay, I'd like to hear your perspective since you're very much a business-to-business product. How do you work with the client for team building, and then also to any sub-consultants that you may use in order to deliver that end product when there is such an emerging market that changes quickly? Leif, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think we as a software company were already very used to using digital technologies to communicate before the pandemic. That doesn't mean that our partners, our customers, were at the same kind of point in their journey as we were. So we still did a lot of things in person, and generally would meet in person if folks wanted to, and use Zoom or other technologies like this to communicate, as much as we could. What we've seen, though, is through the pandemic, I think capabilities and ability to work, remote with your team, both internally, your customers, your partners, your vendors, has just skyrocketed to where now I think the default is to try to work asynchronously first through email, messaging apps, whatever it might be, and then second to meet via webinar or phone call, and really try to lean in on doing things virtually so you can eliminate at least drive time and maybe flight time for us, and only meet in person when it's absolutely necessary. So there are certain parts of what I think every company does that has a better feel, a better outcome, better results if you do meet in person. They're really around creativity and team building. So when you have things that you need to be creative and you need to create a full chalkboard or whiteboard full of drawings like the ones behind me in this still, being in person is so much better than anything you can do, through a computer. Team building, nothing beats, clinking a glass with somebody in person, raising a coffee and saying hi. I mean, there's just something about it that it doesn't come through these webinar tools. But by and large, I think the digital transformation move to online has just been tremendous. And it's also helping with productivity. And I think ultimately is, working across the board for most things that we need to do in business. So for us, it was a pretty easy transition because that's already how we operated. And I can tell you, I've seen a tremendous increase in improvement across the board with folks adopting technology and being able to work, more remote these days.
Gotcha. And Finlay, as someone whose company is based in another state but used Boise to help find its footing and foundation from a business standpoint, how do you deal with that team building aspect when you have projects spread out all over?
Yeah, so ASHRAE, which is kind of the governing body for mechanical, electrical, energy consuming, developed ASHRAE Guideline 0, which is the commissioning process. And in there clearly spells out how to, after 50 years of a bunch of engineers and tons of projects, they've finally spelled out what's the best way to do that team building. And it's, a good route is via the commissioning process. And it starts with understanding the owner's project requirements and getting those incorporated into the design documents and all the way through the construction process, and engaging the owners, end users, maintenance. It's spelled out in that guideline, and honestly, I highly recommend any building owner to read it. It's pretty short, maybe 40 or 50 pages, but it starts with, let's have these meetings, and you have a kickoff meeting with all the team players on the construction side, from the end user side. It keeps them engaged throughout the project. You have meetings throughout, and you show them, okay, this is how things are progressing. And all the way through the end, all the way through warranty. There's training, there's manuals. How many times the building has been turned over and there's been no manuals? I mean, how many pieces of equipment are in there and nobody's been left with any manuals on how this place runs? So, it's been for us as commissioning providers on the engineering company, it's been very successful. And it's, if the owner wants to be engaged, they really appreciate that process, and it gets comfortable with the building, and it also allows the construction team to see what really the end user wants. Maybe that can't be shown clearly in design documents and plan specifications. When you see a plumber talk directly with the owner and say, I like these type of toilet fixtures, and the reason why I have these problems, and all of a sudden, that communication naturally happens. And, I highly recommend any building owner to look at that guideline, because it's
Yeah, that's a fascinating process that you just outlined, and a lot of it being on paper and getting in front of the client as soon as possible. Leif brought up a good point that team building, you can't replace meeting in person and clinking glasses. Dean, what's been your experience with the Boise ecosystem and the team building aspect of the physical presence for Boise?
through the pandemic or just in general?
Whatever you want to share. Absolutely.
Sure.
Pretending the pandemic will go away someday.
Yeah, hope and pray, right? I was pleasantly surprised moving from a larger metro market and coming to Boise about kind of the open doors that were always available, and learned very quickly that anyone and everyone who was passionate about Boise and the growth in Boise and wanting to do it right was an open door to communicate any and everything. Again, coming from a larger market where it was very hard to get a hold of someone at the city, Boise was fairly easy. Being able to actually have a conversation and get up to a mayor's level is somewhat impossible in some jurisdictions, and Boise seems to be pretty easy. So the passion that this community has about wanting to be a good community, and if you as a business or your business goals are aligned with what Boise wants to be, I think it's a great and seamless community to work within, in comparison to the other ones that we've had the opportunity to work in.
Yeah, I like to second that. I mean, I now get to work in other places in the country, and a few things always come out striking about Boise. One is access to people. I mean, you can get a meeting with the governor if you really want it. I mean, it might take you a little while, but you'll get it. And you're not getting a meeting with the governor of California, no matter who you are almost, right? So you can really get into almost any layer of government, any layer of company. If you're a startup and you want to talk to the CEO of Boise Cascade because you're thinking about a wood product company, you could probably get that meeting if you just put your mind to it in probably like 3 to 5 months. We were talking like years, like pretty fast you can get into somebody. So that's been a tremendous benefit to us as a company, being able to go and knock on the door of a tech CEO and a software expert, as I tried to move from being a building practitioner expert to a software expert, and just bend their ear. If you want to learn about policy, going and talking to the politicians. I mean, it's really up and down the entire stack of people. So that's big. It's so different than a lot of other places you might try to start a business and grow a business. The other thing about Boise, I think, is just like people are just so much more accommodating and nice and wanting to be helpful. So not only will they open the door, if they can help you, they will. And if they can't, they're going to introduce you to somebody that can, or keep you going down the road of trying to find the right resource for you. So people want, I think, genuinely to help, not just let you into the door to get through it so they can get on to the next thing. Like they're going to open the door and try to help you, whether they can do it themselves or introduction to somebody else. And that is also very different, because other places you'll get the opportunity. You can see them like looking at their watch because they're ready to get over with it because somebody accidentally booked them because they just don't care. And you don't see that in Boise either. People are like, as Dean said, they're genuinely helpful. And like, I grew up here, so I just kind of, that's just normal. But once you get out of here, you realize it is not a normal thing. Finlay's smiling down there. I mean, he's from Southern California, not the same. So it's a huge benefit we have for startups, especially because we have talent here and they want to help generally with the next group and the next folks that want to start something special.
Yeah, and that's a great point too.
By way of Boston too. So so speaking of that friendliness, you come from the Northeast. It's a tough town, Boston, and you get into New York City, and coming here, just that friendliness is.
Well, I feel like we could continue this conversation all day. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I would really like to thank you three for your contributions to the 2021 Boise Entrepreneur Week build track and this first customer discussion, and very excited to hear your lessons going forward in the future and how that shapes your companies and your products.